carried out. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the conditions of this punishment to be carried out. So the first condition is that it must be stolen, in which the scholars they call khifyatan, yani ala wajh al-khifya. It has to be done secretly. There are different punishments for example, highway robbery where someone comes in. There are different punishments for someone swiping a phone off a desk or pulling a card out of someone's hand and running off, or pulling a handbag and just running off. And there are different things on that. It has to be wealth that is considered to be valuable. It has to reach a certain monetary value. The monetary value is a quarter of a dinar, which or the equivalent currency value. So it has to have a particular value. Now, some people mention in this, what about the hadith about the one who steals an egg? فَتُقْطَعُ يَدُهُ. So they lose their hand for it. The meaning is not that they lose their hand for stealing an egg, but the meaning is that their theft, petty theft, leads them to serious crime and ultimately leads to this to be carried out. It's a condition that it should be taken from its hirz, from a place of security. So it's a premeditated theft that is taken from a place of security, not just, I left my laptop on the table in the coffee shop and I came back and it's not there anymore. And it's somewhere, for example, it's in a safe at home, or it's in its proper place, it's in the cupboard, it's put away. It has to be a theft that is taken from a place of, its proper place, its proper where it belongs, not something that was left accidentally somewhere and taken again. And it has to be proven beyond any doubt. If there are any doubt, then the judge can apply discretionary punishment, but the chopping of the hand cannot be done when there is a doubt or a shubha around it. And finally, it has to be the case that the one who was stolen from actually reports the crime and wants there to be a retribution for this crime, and not the case that they say, okay,
they can choose to forgive,
let it go, and they can say, I don't. They can say that I don't want this wealth. I'm not worried. It was taken from me, and I'm not bothered about it. That's one thing. And also, if there are mitigating factors, mitigating circumstances, they call it in legal terminology. Something like, for example, there is a famine, there is a problem, and people are desperate for food, and somebody, stole something like that. Then this again is not a state of the had is not carried out here, as in the prescribed punishment. There may be ta'zir, there may be discretionary punishments, minor punishments, but the major punishments are not carried out. So really, we're talking about serious, premeditated, deliberate theft. And again, this is something, now I actually want just to reflect upon what's happening in a lot of countries now where theft is not being investigated. It's not being taken seriously. And it's got to the point, even in the UK, right, time we're making this video, where burglaries, people break into people's houses, stealing their life possessions, leaving them feeling, to be honest, violated. I mean, someone's come into your house and broken into your house and stolen things. And it's got to the point where in many cases the police say, well, just fill in the insurance form, that's all we can do for you. And there needs to be a deterrence. There is just no deterrent for this. In current legal systems, people are just stealing with impunity. And this is a premeditated, deliberate theft of serious things of significant value. And I think that needs to have a deterrence. And I think losing your hand is a pretty fitting deterrent for that. It's very appropriate because the person is losing exactly what they used to steal with.
Especially with those conditions. And I think that's something that's coming through in this discussion, that all of these issues, they have a number of conditions that many people might not be aware of. It's a nuanced discussion. It's not just like, I saw him do it, chop of his hand. You've lived in Muslim countries before, a couple of different Muslim countries. Regardless of whether they're implementing this correctly or not, have you seen the issue of theft, for example, like you said, in the UK, is so common, so downplayed. Is it different in the Muslim countries?
Yeah, I think it is different. And I think the more the countries implement this, the less you have in the way of theft. Because theft, really the motivation for theft typically is greed, right? usually. There are cases like mitigating circumstances where it's extreme poverty and things like that. But those would not be typically situations where you would look at the person to lose their hand. Yeah. You're talking about theft, which is primarily motivated by greed. And it really is to see this, societies where this is clamped down on. To be honest, I really felt very strongly about. I actually felt more strongly about this when I was looking into it than I did about, for example, punishments for adultery and apostasy. I recognize the wisdom in all of those. Those are from Allah, and Allah's ruling is the best of rulings. But I really felt this one was one that really resonated with me, because it's a really horrible thing to have something stolen from you like that in a premeditated, deliberate way. And I think that it needs a deterrent. Yeah. And the purpose, Islam does not want people walking around on the street without hands. That's not the purpose of the rule, but you have to have something that genuinely stops people from stealing. And right now you have such a breakdown of the law that burglaries are not even being investigated. People are committing crimes all over. People are coming in gangs just to steal things, and they know that there's no real consequences to what they're going to do. And I think that the whole thing here is that the greater emphasis in Islam is deterrence over retribution. Although retribution is also fair. Again, if you've stolen something and you've taken it from someone in that private place, and you've in a premeditated way, you've broken in and you've taken it out of its private place, and it's something of value, and you've really caused that hurt to the person, what's a fitting retribution? What should you lose? And should you lose your tongue? And you should lose, sorry, but you should lose your hand. That's a fitting retribution for that. And again, we come back to this golden rule, that this is applied more in theft than probably in anything. Because there are shubuhat about it. I thought it was mine. I thought this person owed it to me. I had an agreement with them. There are a lot of shubuhat around theft. So those shubuhat don't cause this to be carried out.
I think just to go back to the discussion on the difference between some of the Western countries and Muslim countries, I think it's often the case that, certainly for myself, I can only speak from my personal experience. When I was living in the UK, I generally felt like it was like this all over the world. I didn't realize it was any different. And then you hear stories of Muslim countries, and you mentioned that when we were talking about in the introduction, that the punishment system in the West and how it's failed. And one of the proofs for that is that people actually used to leave their front doors open, for example. Even in 2021, I know of stories of people in Muslim countries leaving jewelry shops with gold, just open, go for the prayer, come back, the doors open, and because of this deterrent, and it just wouldn't happen. And I think that's something that many people living in the West, they don't realize, and they haven't heard these kind of stories.
And I think it's profound when if you think about that, and you think about, with so much emphasis on looking after these criminals, well, it's so unfair what we do to these poor, robbers and thieves, and it's so unfair what we do to them. But if you look at what one person goes through that, and the effect on the whole city is nobody steals anything. And the whole city undergoes safety and security. The person who went through that, did they commit a crime or not?
They did.
They committed a crime, and they fulfilled the rules of committing the crime. So to be honest, I'm not going to, shed tears over that. I'm actually going to look at the overall picture and say, well, honestly, this person also was forgiven, by the way, for the theft that they committed.